And now we get onto the F word. But what is fashion? Make some effort, do some research, and don't waste your money, and don't buy too many clothes. Is comfort important?
It is.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, I led you into that one. Okay.
I don't think so. It's only about buying good stuff. You can buy a average piece of clothing and look really good in it.
So he sells his art, but there are other vegetable sellers around. That was my best day
Yes,
in
Art
4
Monday.
months. What was it called?
Art Monday.
It was on a Sunday.
Yes.
Oh, art because the location is
Yes,
Monday.
Monday.
Got it. Yeah, Art Monday. As we know, AI will take over the jobs now. For people, students want to do fast fashion, they won't have a career.
There are a lot of pros and cons in AI. I feel that you can use AI for your market research, for your retail, but when it comes to design, I think so your brain is the best thing to use because AI is not going to give you everything. When we see students coming from the smaller cities, smaller towns, it does become a problem in terms of communication, especially in
But are they
fashion.
good at creating?
Yes, they
Especially
are
in
very
fashion?
good at creating, but then they cannot communicate.
So the soft skills part is lagging behind.
Yes. In fashion, it is very necessary.
Hi, hello, welcome. This is InnoTalks, and we are shooting yet another episode today. When we started InnoTalks, the name InnoTalks was coined using two words, obviously. Inno meaning innovative, and talks meaning engaging conversations. We had about 4 episodes so far. I hope you're watching. And if you have not yet liked or subscribed to our channel, this is the time when you do it. But today's talk is truly one of the most innovative talks till we have done till today. And there are a couple of reasons there. One is because the guests we have invited in this studio, you will get to know them in a bit. And the second is we are going to deal with the topic of fashion. Now, fashion is new to me personally, and I would love to know more about fashion, and which is why this episode is here. We would also want to know what fashion education is there in India and in the world also, and any other queries about fashion and the lives of our guests which we have with us today will be covered on this episode. So let's get started. With that in mind, I welcome my guests. Adrien,
Thank you.
welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much.
Manasi,
Hi.
welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
So where should we start this episode? I have a bunch of questions, if I may give a cue.
Well, episode 5. 5 is my lucky number, so we're starting well.
Very well. That's good to know, Adrien. So I have a lot of questions, and I'm truly nervous because you're a big name in the world of fashion, and I don't know fashion. But this is my time to learn about fashion, what fashion is, and there are so many questions in my mind. But I'm going to do a set flow, and I would love to know your thoughts. So, where did this all start, Adrien? How did life lead to fashion? What was the upbringing like? What was the environment? The influences about fashion that you had, and then what do you do currently? Can you tell our listeners about the same?
That's a really big question. So let's take it one piece at a time. It's going to make it easy for me to talk. So upbringing is quite interesting. I like the way you use that word. So if you think of 0 and then less, that's how much fashion content there was in my life. I'm about to show you my iPhone, but obviously my phone's not with me. But today you have everything in your hand. When I was growing up, I had less than nothing because we didn't have fashion magazines even. There was no internet, obviously. TV was very limited. So there was very little information. And it wasn't really fashion that interested in me. It was escaping my own insecurities and the way I was feeling about myself as a child, as a baby. And I used costume and dress to avoid, to cover, to disguise the way I was feeling about myself, and also to give me some strength and power. I like the fact that when you started, you said, I know nothing about fashion. Humility is a wonderful thing. 99% of the world will tell you they know all about fashion, or even worse, they're passionate about fashion, and they don't even know what the word means, or haven't even thought what it means for themselves, which is probably more important. So my beginning was very humble, of zero, but I was using clothing to disguise and to change the way I felt about myself. And I think clothing today is still a great tool, showing respect for yourself and respect for other people.
And what do you currently do, Adrien?
Oh yes, that's a good question. It's at this point I forget what my name is. So I'm the International Director of Education for Accademia Costume e Moda in Rome and Milan. And I've actually been there nearly 11 years. That's the longest job I've ever had. Principally because you, as the Director of Education, you go to a school, you kind of remodel it, revamp it, validate courses, create new courses, make them more international, and then you move on because you've done what you can do and someone else will take over. So at Academia, things have changed a bit. They've respected that I've matured with them. They brought somebody else in to do my day job, allowed me to be more international. And now I'm just, I suppose, the International Director of Education at large. I can go where I want. And I'm sort of in some way self-governing, which is quite a privilege to be. On top of that, I work with charitable organizations. I set up my own not-for-profit global fashion graduate with Arts Thread. Last year, we had our first event in Mexico, and we're aiming for a huge event this year in October. So I try and keep myself quite busy. Tomorrow I have a big webinar, which will be tomorrow evening. That means I'll be setting my alarm clock for 3 a.m. because I still haven't finished my presentation, which is quite normal. I know students tend to leave work until the last minute. I don't. It's just that I have so much to do and I always want to change and improve things that I can't wait to get back to my laptop and immerse myself in some new ideas.
That was a lovely beginning, and I do have a lot of questions there. But what stuck with me was when you said that, as a child, you used clothing to mask the insecurities which were there. And I was kind of reflecting on, how I also grew up, or the importance of clothing as such. But I never have given that much a thought about clothing in general, and how it can really empower your personality, or I don't know how could it change, how could it make an impression in the world.
Well, I'm a bit of an exaggeration. So what I want to see is not anybody else that looks like me. I've decided to look like this. So I'm a bit of an exaggeration. But I just think finding authenticity and enjoying yourself. I think Manasi's a great example. She enjoys her fashion.
Yes.
She's always beautifully coordinated. She knows who she is. She's traveled. She's taken on different cultures. I think maybe in some ways she's a better example than I am, because I've been busy disguising myself.
I think that's a cue for you, Manasi, to tell us your story.
Yes. So obviously, I grew up in a typical Marathi family setup where most of my cousins, my family members have been like engineers and doctors. So obviously, I was led through that path that you have to become an engineer, you have to become a doctor, because
So you didn't become an engineer first?
no.
Because that's what most of them do in India.
Exactly. So I think so. I was the black sheep of the family. So I was never interested in the technical, side. So I was always a art kind of person, more creative. And, there were avenues, but they were not there in Pune. So my father was not very keen on sending me outside Pune for the initial education years. And then, so I started my journey with, post-graduation in School of Fashion Technology, which is in Pune. And after that, I realized that this much education is not going to be enough. So because, Pune, Mumbai, they are not going to provide me with a lot of things which I really need to learn as in terms of exposure. So this is not only fashion related. It's basically, what you want to do in your life. But till the time you see outside, you really don't understand what, you can take and absorb. So that was one of the things which decided, which made me go to London to LCF. And I did my 1 year completed over there, did a good job in Disney, which again helped me a lot. And I came back as a visual merchandiser. I started working with Future Group, then my own business. And now I have kind of, gone into fashion styling as a freelancer. And apart from that, I help students who want to go for further education to Europe or UK.
Yeah.
But it's only in fashion, so that is what I specialize into.
What is your company called?
The name is ILESAA, so it's International Learning and Experience Support Agency.
Okay.
So basically, we support the students who want to go abroad, who don't have any guidance. We help them with their portfolios, etc. And then because there's a lag in what it's been taught in the colleges here and what's outside India.
Okay.
So there's a big gap, and we want to fill it up and give the opportunity to the students who want to go outside.
Yeah. You made an interesting point where you said that when you were growing up, then, or rather it was after you did your graduation, that you felt that there is a lot more to design or fashion, or there's a lot more left to see in the world, and that's why you decided to go to LCF and actually learn more. But why do you feel that, according to you, in India, when we are growing up, or when we are learning more about the world, I mean, the way our choices are in terms of fashion, or in terms of thinking, or in terms of design in general, design thinking in general also at large, is it more limited than what you saw when you went to LCF? And maybe this question is to both of you, but you could start. So
yes, it definitely is. I think so in India, or in general, when you see fashion, it's fashion design. That's what people pursue. What they think about. But fashion is diverse. I mean, you can do so many things in fashion, but that is just not explored. So when you say engineering, what immediately comes in your mind? Mechanical, computers, civil. But when you say fashion, I mean, it must have happened with you also. You just think of fashion design, but that's not the only stream which is there. So there's lots to explore. The students just have to open their mind and just be out there and see what they can. Of course, Adrien is like the global fashion icon, I would say, so he'll be able to enlighten you more on that thought.
what do you think, Adrien? I mean, do you have a different view on this same question?
Probably a slightly different view because I'm a visitor and I'm a guest here in India, but I've been visiting for about 8 years now. And I think things have changed hugely, even in the time I've been here. There is an issue. Well, there are many issues. Indian fashion is fabulous, excellent, and beautiful, but it's Indian fashion. Then we have global fashion, which unfortunately in this country is referred to as Western, which I don't quite understand. Would you call Western fashion Western fashion?
No,
What do you say?
global.
You say global now
Global,
because we know
yes,
each other.
yes.
Yeah. But yes, and why do I say it's not Western? Because yes, although it is kind of dominated by Europe, but we are nothing without the Japanese industry. We are nothing without the Chinese designers or Taiwanese designers. In fact, in some ways, USA design-wise has very little influence compared to what the influence Japan has, for example. So global fashion, if students want to be a part of global fashion, it's really quite hard to live that. Because in India, you have a lot of global popular apparel, and now we get onto the F word, but what is fashion? And that F word is really tricky, as all F words are. There was a period where I really hated it, because I thought it was so abused. Because And generally what most of the world wear is popular apparel. Now I'm looking around here to see who's wearing any blue jeans today. And look, nobody is, because I had a conversation with you the other day, and obviously it's working. But
blending in?
well, almost. I mean, lighter pants with a darker shirt, maybe not, but almost. However, most of the world wears popular apparel, and that's fine. But if you want to be authentic and you want to appreciate yourself and show respect to others, make some effort, do some research, and don't waste your money, and don't buy too many clothes.
You're saying don't buy too many clothes but the moment we step out of this facility, the studio here, I'm going to see big malls with so many clothes there, and that is what fashion is to me. That's what
No, you see, that's what fast fashion is. Fast fashion is telling you about trends which don't exist. Fast fashion and the popular apparel will want you to buy another t-shirt, another pair of trousers, another pair of shoes to make you feel better for yourself, to get self-gratification. It's about a little bit like me and chocolate. You know, you pop another sweetie in your mouth, you feel good for 5 minutes. But do you really need it? I've got this great hobby, or we have this great hobby. We go shopping, and I'm delighted. I get home and I've bought nothing, because there's nothing I want, nothing I need, nothing I haven't got. There's hardly anything that's extraordinary in the stores. If it is, it might be extortionately priced and I can't afford it. So it's wonderful going shopping and buying nothing. Honestly, you can get quite a high from it, rather than getting a high from buying another t-shirt that you wear once and you're not so happy with it. I have bought fast fashion. I've got these large t-shirts I bought from ASOS. Oh, it's advertising. And I think I bought them about 7 years ago, and they're massive. I mean, literally huge. And at home, I live in them. I don't think I've ever really worn them out, but I just live in these huge t-shirts that I just love wearing. And it's my home gear. And I don't need to wear trousers with them. They come almost to the floor, and they're just massive, and I've worn them forever. So if you are going to buy fast fashion, just count a diary of how often you're going to wear it. And I must wear some of my things hundreds of times. So I'm kind of a way giving respect to people who made that fabric, people who put that garment together, despite the fact it was paid for peanuts. Just think about how often you wear something. How often have you worn the shoes you're wearing today?
almost every day,
Excellent.
because they're very comfortable.
Is comfort important?
It is.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, I led you into that one. Okay.
those are amazing.
Well, actually, they are comfortable, but yeah, there's a story about everything I wear, obviously.
I was about to ask you, you wear a lot of black, or rather it's all black. Is there a story behind that
It
color?
got there eventually. So, as a child, I was fascinated. As a child, I was growing up in the 60s. Everything was pink and purple and bright colors. It was
yeah.
like India. India was
Yes.
like, because the hippies came here, people discovered India. They discovered color, and a lot of color for us started happening with the synthetic fabrics starting in the 50s. With new synthetic dyes, new colors were possible. So color started to pop out and get brighter in the 50s onwards, when we had more synthetic fabrics, when nylon and polyester started to being popular and they were easy to dye and the colors didn't fade. So color started then, and so in the 60s you were really color blind. You were blinded by color, and I rather a lot of bling, and I quite liked the purple t-shirt, and I wanted a black t-shirt, but it wasn't allowed. I remember being smacked because I asked for a pair of flared trousers once. So yeah, I think that black was always there, but I've experimented with color. I enjoyed color. And then as I grew up a bit more and realized I wanted to experiment with volume, form, shape and proportion, and also the gender of clothes or ungendering clothes, then having a uniform that was black made life so much easier. Do you know how easy it is for me to pack and always being coordinated?
Oh, yes. I can imagine that.
And also, when I see people put beautiful. When people put the wrong blues together, your blues are matching really
Yes.
well. People just assume, oh, blue goes with blue. And what is this idea? It goes with. There is no go with process. do colors harmonize or not harmonize? If you don't want a color to harmonize, you can still do that. I shouldn't be talking to Indians about color because you're all born with this most magical sense of color. So I must say, you're just sitting here in black and gray. You've kind of just proved me wrong, but maybe you were intimidated by the blackness. However, color is important, and I love people wearing color, and I hate students designing only in black, because it's just a bit of a cop-out. So this is my uniform. There are many people that wear black. It was kind of left over from the 80s fashionista things where people wore black for power. But there are a lot of people like Yohji Yamamoto. He's spoken a lot about blackness and why he designs with black. But it does make my life a lot easier.
But talking about black, the only other person who used to wear a lot of black was Steve Jobs. He used to wear a lot of black, and it was very simple. But when you wear black, what I've been seeing, it's almost like an identity is coming to the fore. It's not just black with the jewelry, with the fabrics and everything else.
Well, I'm escaping from just being basic black. I like minimalism, but I'm just not very good at it. I need to practice more. So I knew I was coming to see you, so I thought I'd wear the biggest ring that I've made and some bigger shoes to make a bigger impact. But it's quite nice having respect for yourself and also for your audience and say, look, it can be fun, experiment and enjoy yourself. And don't just wear things for comfort. I mean, I love comfort and believe in comfort. I fly always wearing these trousers or something similar because they're jersey and they're the most comfortable trousers. I would never wear a pair of denim jeans to fly in. Why would you do that? You've got rivets, you've got seams, you've got a hard fabric, unless you're wearing stretched denim, which does not look good on most bodies. So wear comfortable clothes maybe, but just make sure they're the right ones.
But then there are two things that you talked about. One is about authenticity, bringing the authentic you out there, and then you also talked about comfort. So should authenticity trump over comfort
When you get
in
to
fashion?
a certain age, you find an elasticated waistband a blessing.
I do understand that.
If you enjoy eating, there's nothing nicer than an elasticated waistband. You don't have to undo that button. So I think style trumps everything, and style isn't fashion. You can buy fashion, but you can't buy style.
Yes, absolutely.
So I don't know if I'm fashionable anymore. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. I'd hope I'd have some style.
Oh, you have loads.
But
Oh, you have loads, yes, definitely.
sorry?
Yeah, you have loads of
I'll
style.
try.
So,
I'm doing my
absolutely.
best, but it's maybe better to aim for style than it is for fashion, because you could be chasing something forever. However, you never really arrive. I don't know. Do you ever look in the mirror and are you satisfied?
No.
Good. Does satisfaction exist?
But I tell you, when you look in the mirror and you think whether are you satisfied, the next question comes, okay, what should I do to be satisfied? So probably satisfaction doesn't exist. But we still chase it, no?
It's very good to. I think it's quite healthy to chase it, but I think we've spoken before about body shaming
Yes,
and
yes.
understanding who your own limits or not limits, and realize that we should be dressing our brains and not our bodies. That's one of my talks tomorrow. If people would stop trying to fit everything to the body and rather fit it to your brain, you'd be a much more interesting person.
Body shaming and maybe body shaming or being shamed for color in general, because you grew up in India, and being shamed for color was so prevalent, probably is still prevalent in India, where our culture gives extra brownie points to the fair color. Right?
Brownie points to the fair color.
Yes,
That's quite a contradiction.
absolutely, Conrad.
But so you coming into fashion as you were growing up, was it also because you wanted to change this side about fashion, where you didn't quite appreciate that body shaming, you didn't quite appreciate where people were judged for the color and all of that. And did things like these also have an influence on you when you came to fashion, or does it generally have an influence on people who decide to come into fashion?
I obviously cannot talk for everyone, but for me, it definitely has happened because I was body shamed a lot because I was very skinny, extremely skinny till the time I was in college or even after that, when I went to London. But I was not body shamed there. I was body shamed only in India. And, it's always your own family or your friends who would be, why are you wearing this? Because it doesn't look good on you. And that somewhere got stuck in the mind that you have to change something about yourself to be confident. So the first thing what you actually see is then clothes, because that is what is going to make you look good or bad. So that was my take on it. But yes, definitely when I started exploring, experimenting, the kind of confidence I got for myself, there was no looking back after that.
But the confidence you got from yourself, was it public appreciation, where people started appreciating what you're doing,
Yes.
or was it you feeling good about yourself, like Adrien just mentioned?
It's both the ways because as you said, when I look in the mirror, if I don't feel that okay, I'm not like 100% dressed, that 100% is in my mind, but then I'll just put on something, okay, now this is going, this is not going, and that is how I make my 100%. Obviously that might be not the same thing for someone else who sees me, but that is my how my mind plays, that I have to be looking like this in a certain way when I go out, be it a meeting, be it a party, be it a lunch, be it a dinner. So those are that's something which keeps playing in the mind, that I want to dress up in this kind of manner. So it is self satisfaction, and it adds when someone else comes up to you and says that, oh, I want to look like you, you're wearing something which I would probably not dream of wearing because you're carrying it well. So I don't think so. It's only about buying good stuff. You can buy a average piece of clothing and look really good in it.
Yeah, so fashion
So,
need not be expensive.
yes,
Is that what you mean?
oh no, not
That's a
at
very
all.
interesting,
Not- yes,
Style
point
may
you
not
made.
be
Yes.
expensive.
yes.
But
not-
popular fashion may not be expensive, but then popular fashion probably leads to another thing where we say that if there is a t-shirt, if there's a yellow t-shirt, then there are 100 copies of that yellow t-shirt in popular fashion, which doesn't make you exclusive in terms of what you're wearing. It may be authentic for yourself, but it's not exclusive. What's your take on that then?
It's basically how you make it exclusive. So you might think that that's only one yellow t-shirt, which probably hundreds of people have, but the way you wear it is going to change everything.
So the question is that if let us say I'm wearing something and I feel authentic about what I'm wearing, and then I go into the party where I decided I want to look this way, and you bump into your friend or whoever it is, and you find that friend dressed up in exactly the same way, with the same kind of clothes, because everybody is exposed to popular fashion so much. Does that reduce the level of authenticity that you went out of your home with, and now you're feeling, oh, I'm no longer authentic, or I'm, how does it play in terms of?
I think so. It is in your mind. It's only in your mind. I don't think so. Rest of the people who are there are going to think in that way, because really no one has the time to do that. It's just your own self perception. Okay, that someone else is also owning the same piece, and But again, as I said, that whether you're wearing it with what kind of trousers, what kind of shoes, if you're pairing it up with a jacket, with a loose shirt, that is what is going to make you different from that person
Yeah.
who's just wearing a basic yellow t-shirt.
Well said, I agree. So I think then that is where you flirt with styling of fashion to make your authentic self come to the fore. When we talk about body shaming or shame for color, the one ad kept on playing in my mind. I remember growing up in Pune, and this brand had just come to India, which was called the United Colors of Benetton. Again, not an advertisement, but the ad that used to play for UCB used to have lovely faces of different color, and I'll be honest with you, the first time I saw that, it used to, I think it used to look very intimidating for that day and age, because you used to see so many different faces wearing so many lovely clothes, and it used to be called United Colors of Benetton. Well, but when you looked around in India, there was nobody looking like that. That kept the store out of your reach. Yeah.
Well,
When it was just a simple T-shirt that those faces were wearing.
there's, Benetton is hugely famous for its adverts. They've created adverts without any clothing in them, without any models or any clothing. They create adverts, or they created adverts to provoke and create sales of the basic clothes they were selling. They created a chain of creating clothes where they could mass dye. So it was their policy to make everything basically in white or grez, or a simple color, and then dye lots of things, lots of bright colors, and that's the way they produced their clothes. And they made their business model to do that, and they were the first company to do that, along with the advertising, which really took over the brand, the advertising. But unfortunately, it was one of the companies that was producing in Bangladesh at the plaza, which collapsed. So they were still churning out lots of smiley people with brown and yellow faces, while they just massacred a few thousand people.
Oh.
So their advertising took a bit of a dip. And they've only ever been producing popular apparel anyway. They've never really delved that into so much fashion. After saying that, I just realized we've just done a project with them. But never mind. It's an interesting company, but they did really work well, and they were pioneers in advertising.
Yeah.
And advertising now has become everything. In fact, maybe fashion communication is more important than the clothing.
Yeah.
Because you can communicate and be a winner, and yet you might be designing the most fabulous thing but not communicate it. Nobody knows about it.
Correct. Then, like I said, that when the Benetton ad started coming to the fore, it felt very exclusive. Now, being exclusive, does it still qualify as popular fashion? Because not many people were perhaps buying it, which also meant they were not producing as many units of that T-shirt like any other brand in India would be.
In India, they were exclusive. In the rest of the world, they were mass market. It was
they were
fast
popular
fashion
elsewhere, but they were
It wasn't popular. It
exclusive
was fast fashion everywhere else.
fast
It was like basic. So in India, the price point for the living wage was high.
It was very high at
Really?
that point in time. Yeah.
Where in the rest of the world, it would be, you'd be embarrassed.
Yeah.
It was so cheap.
So how do you differentiate between popular fashion and fast fashion?
Good question. I think popular apparel, see, I would call denim popular apparel.
Okay.
And it doesn't need to be denim or jeans wear. It doesn't need to be fast fashion. You've got all the big houses with all the big names putting their labels on denim because they want to be part of that market and charging a fortune. So that's still popular apparel, but it's not fast fashion. You can still be turning out popular apparel to make a lot of money without necessarily being fast fashion.
And then what is fast fashion?
Fast fashion is garments that are created. It's now getting quite interesting because now we've got AI. It's all about algorithms. So things that sell will carry on selling because we'll just produce more of them.
Yes.
So fast fashion are things that are being sold or basically copied, similar things that designers are creating, and then they're deciding, well, this will become what they think would terminate, with the terminology of a trend, and create more of it and say, this is a trend, this is in, this color, this shape, this form is what is in this season. And we still hear that. In fact, when I watch TV, you still have presenters presenting that to people and telling them, this is going to be big this season. Why on earth would you want to wear something that everybody else is wearing? Because people are sheep. I worked for a wonderful person, Lupa Lanzara, who when he talks to students, reminds them they were all born individual. And it's the job of academicos to memorder to find that individual again. Most people spend their lives trying not to be individual. And yet you were all born different. And then all of a sudden, especially young children, you probably see it yourself with young children, they want to go to school and all look like each other and be like each other, to feel part of that team and not be excluded. Well, some of us didn't have the choice. We felt excluded anyway. And therefore we became more authentic and we're happier. And all the others are
Very
trying.
well said. Amazingly said.
And all the real losers are the ones who are trying to catch up to be like everybody else, rather than I look at somebody else and who'd want to be like them anyway. If I'm not interested in watches, I'm not interested in cars, so I've got nothing to chase. Have you got a nice watch on?
Thank you.
Is that? I don't know. It's a question because I wouldn't know.
I like that watch.
Okay. But a watch is your thing?
No, this is the watch that I was gifted by someone, and then I've been wearing it ever since.
Well, that's nice. So it has sentimental value.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, emotional attachment.
I have a question for you, Mansi. So you said fashion in India is always coined with the word design, right? So I think it comes with the word design when it is considered as a career choice. But design itself, it has a larger perspective. Like I was having a discussion with one of the friend, and he said that in design, form follows the function of whatever is being designed in general. Would it be the same for fashion design also, that when clothes are being designed, when apparel is being designed, form also follows a function?
Actually, he would be rather a better person to answer your question, because he's been in the industry and taught for a very long time. So for the design part, I think so he would be a.
But the trailing bit of that question was that did your mentors talk a lot about these things? I mean, how did your mentors really influence you to think very differently about design, about fashion, or about fashion design?
I wouldn't say I had a mentor as such, who told me, how about the design part or something. It was something which was completely self-explored.
I talk about design methodology. If I say that to an Indian student, they have no idea what I'm talking about.
I'm sure you have been a mentor to many budding designers.
I am every day. I was 2 minutes ago. One Italian student, not even my student, that talks to me all the time, was asking my opinion on something. Unfortunately, I have hundreds of people who send me pictures and things, and unfortunately, I replied to them all. And I feel rather a responsibility if they're prepared to listen. And those very immature people, if you don't give them candy, they don't want to listen if you tell them the truth. And unfortunately, you can imagine, I always tell people what I think, which might not always be a blessing. So I have a little filter. I think, really, to be honest, I think there are very little mentors.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I was educated at some of the best schools.
Did some of the mentors influence your journey so far in fashion?
That were genius.
Oh.
And I love to remember them in my heart. Jacob Healy was my pattern cutting tutor, so the tailor, as if you like, of Central St. Martin's. And he was obviously a generous person, but just wonderful in understanding how cut and design worked well together. And nobody ever talks about Jacob. They talk about lots of other famous teachers at St. Martin's, CSM. Nobody ever mentions him. And he did John Galliano's first 5 collections. Oh, and by the way, he's Jewish. And John has no issues with Jewish people, despite the fact what happened to him. Colin McDowell, who is a very famous author, and he was a very famous designer. And he spent a little bit of time at CSM when I was there teaching. And when he stopped teaching, he would always invite me to his house to go through my sketchbook. And he was very kind. And also, he had no filter, would say, but he was so encouraging. So Colin and Bobby Hilson, she was head of masters at CSM. Although I wasn't on her course, she was in every single one of my critiques and always encouraged me. A lot of people, Vanessa Denza, she was one of the first headhunters in fashion in the world, and she always knew everything I was doing and always tried to help. So I was fortunate. I had one or two people around.
So the fashion that you wear today, is it like bits and pieces of all these mentors and whatever they?
No, because no, they would never talk. I suppose in a way Jacob did, because he really turned me on to pattern cutting and creative cutting and shapes and volumes and thinking in 3D. So I suppose I refer to him more than anybody. And he wasn't a designer and wasn't famous. I don't know. I should get in touch with some of my colleagues, my old colleagues from school, and see what they think. I was talking to my friend Louis this morning on chatting to him. I should ask what he thought of Jacob, but for me, he was magic. We had we had more characters in those days than we did have teachers. I had one tutor called Hannah Vile, and she spoke with a very strong accent. And Vile sounds quite. She was like a cartoon character. She never took off her dark glasses, and we would always criticize color. Until one day I said, "Will you take your damn glasses off? Because you can't see what you're looking at." But I take mine off occasionally.
So then, Adrien, I've been thinking that if I go to a tailor, the reason I go to a mall and buy whatever I want to, I do that because if I go to a tailor, I wouldn't know what to really tell him. And it's easier to buy a pair of jeans or a shirt or a t-shirt. So what are your thoughts on this? If I go to a tailor, what should I tell him?
First of all, going to a tailor is a sign of respect. And I think here in India, that's so important. Go to a tailor with humility and respect, and appreciate you're going to a great craftsman, rather than going to a store and spending money, and that money's going into somebody else's pocket that's probably foreign and don't deserve your money. Whereas a tailor's a craftsman who's worked for decades to create things. If you have a garment that you particularly like, and you'd like another one, but in a different color, then go to a fantastic store and ask them their opinion on fabrics. Okay. Listen to them, let them sell you some fabric. Take your garment to the tailor and say, please copy this. And then maybe say, please copy this, but put a short sleeve on. Or please copy this and make it shorter or longer. That's the way of starting. And that makes you a designer of yourself. You've also got something unique. You won't go to that party wearing that yellow t-shirt and looking like everybody else. And it's so easy. It's actually cheaper. It's circular economy. You're keeping families alive by using tailors, not keeping factories going. So I have been asked by students, why can't we buy fast fashion? We want something special to wear on a Saturday night. And these are fashion students. So it's like, for goodness sake, design yourself something special to wear and have the courage of wearing it. And then maybe you'll appreciate your design, or what a bad designer you are because you don't like what you're wearing. But it's good to have that experience. So look out for those tailors and just have the courage. Yeah. Actually, maybe women generally were more prepared to do that in India.
Yes, absolutely.
And perhaps the men are just a little bit lazy. Not that you're lazy, but you could be more considerate.
That's an interesting perspective there. And, you've seen a lot of fashion across the world. When we met the other day, you're talking about Japanese fashion, the Chinese fashion designers, and then of course there are Indian fashion designers also. So from a global perspective, if you had to rate the Indian fashion designers, or those who anybody, the big and the small, those who are already known, those who are already unknown, but you may have seen so many. How do you rate the Indian fashion designers with the fashion that you've seen in the world? How is it different?
The Indian fashion designers are the best in the world, absolutely, without a doubt, at designing Indian fashion.
Yeah, so they are unique in itself, they are authentic to what they design.
And their own culture. Going beyond that, we have big problems. And we see a lot of really marvelous Indian designers who work with the most fabulous craftspeople, creating collections and showing in Paris. There's very few of them who have enough culture, broad global culture, to be able to create a sustained collection that works, because they don't know why they're creating those shapes other than the fact they've seen it on some other designer's catwalk. I don't know if I can mention any names, I probably shouldn't, but there's one or two designers who have gone beyond that and have done that for quite some time and have had fantastic careers, because they work with and they employ interesting teams, teams of people from all over the world to work with them. I think that kind of helps. Just having that global curiosity to understand what fashion is. I've worked with different students, and sometimes in India I do a project where we're looking at my culture, what I call my cultural baggage, and I share that with students. And then I ask them to start writing down their cultural baggage and start designing with that. And obviously theirs is a bit smaller and mine's a bit bigger because I'm old. And but fashion is just a reflection of culture. It's what you decide to bring to the fore, or at that moment that you find interesting or appealing. So every week or every 2 weeks I'm doing presentations online. Tomorrow I've got one still to finish called Menswear Fluid Fashion. And just doing it, I've learned so much. And what I've been doing, I've been analysing a lot of the collections from Paris last week and going on a journey with some of the looks, and discovered some amazing things because I'm curious. I'm asking students at interviews, tell me what happened in Paris yesterday, and they're offended that they should have had time to look at a fashion show which they can see on their telephone, and then analyse it and have a think about it and have an opinion. People are just generally lazy.
Can Indian textiles, because fashion is at the root of it is so much about fabric and textiles, like you mentioned when we were discussing the tailor topic. Can Indian textiles be integrated into the global scene? And have you seen a lot of these examples where traditional Indian weaves are being integrated in global fashion, so to say? And do they do well?
Yes, but it has been done for centuries. So to offer something new
Yes.
is often the issue. I would love to work with a hand loomer, some of the hand weaving things. My desire for years has been to create ikat. It blows my mind, the creators
Yes,
of
the
ikat.
ikat, yeah.
How you create ikat. And ikat's quite essential to India and also Indonesia.
Yes.
If you don't know how it's created, please go and research. I'm not going to tell you now, but it's mind-blowing how people can create this fabric without the technology we have now. With technology, it'd be super easy, but with the craftspeople, they have to measure everything and tint that yarn at the right place at the right time, and then weave it together so it creates a form and a pattern. It's insane. I would love to work with, but it's very hard to find craftspeople that want to try something new, because they think their craft is their heritage and it's static, rather than everything we do isn't static. History is a living subject, it's not static. So it's part of the issue is trying to get craftspeople to do newness and not just repetition and say, but it's Indian, it's handmade, accept it, it's beautiful. Well, it's all that, but it could also be new.
Okay. So do you see a lot of ikat being used in the global
No.
No,
scene?
not at all.
No.
Not at all.
Somewhere I feel that the everything that we see in as fashion out there has deep roots in good quality of fashion education, and that's why my next question is for you, Mansi, where I feel I've always heard this term called portfolio design in fashion, and having a great portfolio makes you employable and so many things. Can you talk about portfolio design for our listeners today?
Basically, portfolio is something where you compile your assignments, whatever work you like, the smallest of sketches you do throughout your course of say 3 years, 4 years, you just compile it together and make it into a portfolio. So when you basically go to any employer, or you want to take an admission, somewhere, you show your portfolio, and that is going to represent your skills. The design part is completely different. So portfolio is different for different streams. Like for communication, it will be more communication based. For design, it can be, even the roughest of sketches.
But when we are talking about the portfolio for design, and Adrien was mentioning different Indian fabrics in the global scene, so do students also get to design a portfolio for a specific type of fabric, or is it all linked at some point in?
So honestly, students don't need to, have any barrier in terms of, designing anything or putting anything in their portfolio. Whatever they see, you know, they can just sketch, feel, have small bits and pieces there in their portfolio to understand, from where to where they're going to go in terms of a design or a, garment later on. This necessarily would not be a communication, like a fashion communication student would do, but then they have different skills, like, probably digital design or using AI in for the designing part or for their communication part. So those two portfolios are going to be completely different. So when I say, like, for a student, we have, like, a lot of gap in what we do in India in terms of making a portfolio, and what is internationally, like globally, what is expected. Yes, yes.
So what
So
mistakes do you see? Or
it's
what qualifies as a good portfolio for you?
I think so. In India, it's mainly assignment based, which should not be there, because an assignment can be, like, same for the, like, 5 people, 10 people. So their projects are finally going to be the same as well. Your portfolio should be very individual. It should show what you are and what you aim at doing. Your skill set is going to be different from the other student's skill set, and it should show that. There should not be any barrier in that creation, I feel. The portfolio making should start from the first year of the college.
Okay. So this is all that they teach in a fashion school or in a
No one,
school of design
honestly,
also.
actually, unfortunately, no one teaches you how to make your portfolio. That is why the gap is there. Am I right?
That's why I do it.
Yeah.
When I left school, nobody told me how to make a portfolio. So that's kind of why it's my sticky point, that I see thousands of portfolios every year, and good ones rarely appear because a lot of schools are lazy. They teach students to look at trend books. The thing that normally lacks is original research, or where students copy designs, or they use the word inspiration, and it's a picture of somebody else's work on Instagram, and that's plagiarism.
Yes.
There's a huge amount of that goes on. Oh, and mood boards, they kill me with Pinterest. There is no career for someone who downloads images that they've just Googled on Pinterest. And Pinterest is getting worse. You're trying to I have so many images I want to find that I know a certain photographer took, or a stylist, or Grace Coddington, or Vogue, or something. I've seen this image a million times. I don't have it. I don't have my library with it. And I'm Googling it, and it comes up as Pinterest. And it's destroyed our world, because it's almost like an artificial online library, which doesn't exist. We all basically need to walk around with libraries, and we could have them in our phone, but it's being destroyed by people like Pinterest. And then students think it's real. It's dreadful. It's really sad. There's a lot of bad education around.
And then you solve that. Portfolio design is a topic which is very, very, very close to your heart, right?
I could talk about it all day.
Fluid fashion, and
I have to also say
portfolios
it's a
also.
cultural subject. So in India, a portfolio can be a lookbook. These are the dresses I've made, and this is my portfolio. And that might be fine for the Indian market. I don't know. Maybe that's what Indian designers want to see.
Yes.
Oh, you made a pretty dress. That's fine. I'd like you to make some more pretty dresses. But in the rest of the world, outside India, and I mean from Japan to USA, the whole rest of the world, Australia, that wouldn't cut. That's lookbook, and we're not interested. We're interested in process. And if you ask an Indian, please show me your design process, they will show you how they put a sleeve in, and you'd say, no, that's the construction process. Design is not drawing. Design is a verb, and it's where you're creating a blueprint. I even go over what design is, because students, unfortunately, aren't even taught what design is. They're taught how to draw, they're taught how to dress make, and they're supposed to, those things
Yes.
supposed to go together. Well, actually, they don't. They need to be taught how to design.
So why do you think Indian students or Indian designers, like you said, are not taught the process in general?
I can't say they're
What
all
stops
not, because there are some good schools that will teach that, perhaps. But there's probably many different cultural issues, especially with a new generation that needs to
Yes,
be
absolutely.
told that they're good every 5 minutes, otherwise,
Instant gratification.
yeah.
Yes.
Whereas if you go internationally, you're not going to get told you're good ever at any point in your academic career. It's not going to be easy. I always say nothing is as painful as learning, because you have to take feedback every day, and it might be negative every day. But that's not feedback negativity on your personality or your appearance. It's on your skills and your ability, which you're getting feedback to be told how to improve, which for some people seems to be feedback to be taken personally, because they're actually being lazy and they can't be bothered to improve. Yeah.
I think, I think so. With the students, I think what I have seen is generally now, I mean, of course, it's a digital age, so they are going to rely on that. But somewhere, going back and using the books as references is very, very important, because if you ask any student about the history of fashion, I'm sure they are going to be blank. And that also comes, I mean, it's not only globally. I mean, even if you ask them about the Indian textiles, you have to read about them, you have to feel them. Only then they are going to understand what it actually is.
Yeah.
Digitally, seeing everything is not going to, allow you to do a lot of things, I feel. So use the library a lot.
Yes.
I
And there are some good libraries in India,
Yes,
some excellent
absolutely.
libraries. But my school, the other day, I gave one course a non-digital project where everything had to be not digital, just for one project, just so the students could experience that, what it was like for us, what it's like to go back to sketching, drawing things, rather than just photographing it or Googling it, looking at books. And there's some wonderful libraries. I think we're going to have a kickback in a few years where people will appreciate libraries. I've got two of the world's greatest. I love my librarians at academia. I always want to do interviews with them. 5 minutes with a librarian can be worth more than an hour with a professor. They can guide you to a book or an article that nobody else knows, that it's not been digitalized, that nobody even knows of. And they're always looking around the world to buy a book or something that they think is going to help a certain project. Professors go and talk to librarians and say, can you find this book? It's out of print. And they build amazing narratives about the books they buy in magazines and the things they put together. It's an incredibly important job, and they're just seen as librarians who tell you to be quiet. In fact, we don't want librarians to be quiet. My library, but I just love the whole world of a library and buying books. I've got a lot of books, and they're all in Rome, and I'm suffering. I can't buy any more. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
love
I
buying
think
books.
fashion seems to be a very slow, research-based.
Yes.
It's not slow research.
I mean, you need to do a lot of research and not rely on
But
instant gratification.
research is constant. Research, like I'm in this room here, and I'm already looked at. Well, where's that picture I saw on the wall there? Over there, that's the vegetable market I went
Yes,
to.
yes, there's a
That
vegetable.
one day a year it turns into an art gallery with artists, and the artists, local artists, give the money to the vegetable seller for one day, so he sells his art. But there are other vegetable sellers around. That was my best day
Yes,
in
Art
4 months.
Monday.
What was it called?
Art Monday.
It was on a Sunday.
Yes.
Oh, Art, because the location is
Yes,
Monday.
Monday.
Got it, yeah. Art Monday. That was just the best experience I've ever had in 4 months in Pune. And I bought the most beautiful watercolor. I'm passionate about watercolors. And it costed like 30 euros. And then a friend bought me something else. And then once random guy was walking around, he did a sketch and gave it to me. And then I went to see the vegetable sellers, and I just love beautiful vegetables and fruit, and photographed them with all their colors and what they were wearing. That, for me, was a library. And I posted that on my Instagram, and I know who my friends are and who are watching, and they work in fashion education or some form of creativity. They went crazy for this. And yet in Pune, how many people even
Oh,
know
no,
about
no.
it?
Not
And
many.
it should be
many.
happening on a monthly basis, not to make money, but those artists were just amazing people sitting there, selling their artwork. I mean, some of it was, in my opinion, great, some of it was not so great, but my opinion doesn't really count. It's what the people liked, and the atmosphere was amazing. And there was some musicians. I think they were playing Beatles music, which I found really odd, but quite pleasing at the same time. The architecture is obviously uh,
It's
Victorian
colonial.
British,
Yes, it's
and I
colonial.
felt
It's
like I was
colonial.
at a railway station because our railway stations still look like that.
Yes, it's been built. It
But
was
it's
built by a British governor.
yeah, but it's just wonderful, and the vegetables were just crazy, and the way they arranged the vegetables was insane. It was so beautiful. It's art. Why go to even an art museum if you can go to a vegetable market?
That's a very different perspective.
So I just do my research, just looking up there your pictures, because you had that picture, and then you've got the fort there, and that's a very nice sketch there. But some amazing local artists in India that should be encouraged, and let your children draw.
Adrian, what is fluid fashion? You seem to talk a lot about
I'm
it. You
talking a
have your
lot because I'm
webinar
about
as
to
well.
present that tomorrow.
Can you
But
tell us more about fluid
yeah,
fashion?
well, basically, we have got in this room, I think we've got 2 official females, correct? And you're both wearing men's clothing.
Yes.
So you're actually fluid wearers. Whereas most men here aren't wearing anything fluid, very little at all. So fluidity, I suppose, started. There were 2 reasons it started about in the mid 1800s, certainly in Europe. One was for emancipation of women, because women were just objects and they weren't allowed to have pockets, they had to have clothes that had to be laced into, they had to fit into certain male stereotypes. So they were rebelling against that. Then there's the aesthetic movement, which were rebelling against the aesthetic idea of what it was to be a woman. And by the time we got to the 1920s, the rebellion continued so much that it actually worked. Hollywood came along and we saw women wearing men's clothing, and I'm talking all about that tomorrow. We've had some kind of emancipation for the man, and some kind of provocation, which started roughly around 2000. In this period, we had it with the hippies and the peacock generation of the 1960s, but again, we're seeing it more happening in 2012, 13, 14, 15. It's died down a little bit, but we've had the stars appearing on catwalks, and at the Met Gala, guys wearing dresses. It's the way clothes are just pieces of fabric. They don't have gender, and we decide they do. And people are getting a bit fed up of that. So I wear trousers sometimes I don't, but I still feel 100% male. I think there's a large proportion of the world, male, who don't traditionally wear trousers in India. Not the
Yes,
whole population
absolutely. Yes.
feels they need to wear trousers, and yet we're all trying to be male and
What do they wear
female.
then?
They wear lungis, veshtis.
Lungis.
Yeah, they'll wear vesties.
Yes.
Oh,
That's fluid fashion.
Yes.
yeah,
that's
it's fluid,
fashion.
and you had it before we had it.
And the Scottish men wear skirts.
Yes.
No, they don't. They wear kilts.
Kilts,
they
yeah.
wear
Kilts.
It's actually one piece of fabric. It's amazing. The story of the kilt is absolutely stunning. I have a kilt. I had it made for me. Unfortunately, I'm too fat for it now. But it caused a lot of controversy, because if a woman wears a skirt, if you're a man and you're trying to look under a woman's skirt constantly, you'd be arrested. I go out in a kilt. I remember on the London Tube, everyone was just trying to do this to see if I was wearing any underwear. But unfortunately, the first time I wore my kilt was in Moscow. I had a big fur coat on and my kilt was black on black check. And I arrived at the fashion show, and the fashion show, like typically in Russia, goes on forever. Oh, they do also go on forever in India as well. And everybody was like doing this, I was in the front row. I was trying to keep my legs together the whole time. Because there's the myth that you don't wear underwear. Well, actually, you don't wear underwear under it. So everybody wants to peep at your bits. And I escaped after hours of keeping my legs together after the show, and they took me to a very special club where I was the honourable guest, which was wonderful. And they said it's upstairs, so I was, thank you very much. The staircase was glass, and so was the ceiling and floor of where I was going, and I obviously had to keep my legs. I had a special walk, shall we say. Everyone had to get hoisted and then walk together nicely. So a man wearing anything, what basically is a skirt and a short skirt, it creates, if I can ask you, it creates sensual vulnerability.
Yes.
You, as a woman, you feel vulnerable.
Absolutely.
So if a man wears something that's not a trouser, it's very strange for a man to feel sensually vulnerable. Have you ever worn something that felt sensually vulnerable? Have you been on the beach without your costume on and just a towel wrapped around you, and you're thinking, oh, can anybody see what they shouldn't be looking at? You feel sensually vulnerable. Somebody touched your leg, you would feel vulnerable. That's what it's like to be women. So women preferring trousers because they're not feeling so sensually vulnerable. But to a man, it can also give a great sense of freedom. And also, it's helping women to understand that they can feel, women wear men's clothes now very easily and very beautifully. And maybe it's about time that we just shared our clothes and realized that pieces of fabric don't really have gender.
A lot of schools in India these days, and that's so well put, the way you explained about fluid fashion. A lot of schools in India are now going towards gender neutral clothing.
That is so cute.
And it was very different many years ago.
Yeah.
But I think it's also easier.
Yes, I think so. It's definitely, easier for the girls, I would say, more than the boys.
It also helps with body shaming.
Yes.
Like, oh, look at your legs.
Yes.
Well, why aren't you looking at a boy's? It's actually quite funny, though. If a man wears a pair of shorts in Europe, or especially in the UK, maybe not so much in Europe, people generally feel that they can laugh at a man's legs. They think there's something funny about a male leg. Oh, look, he's got hairy legs.
Oh.
Legs.
That happens?
Yeah. British humour. If you go back to the 1970s and 80s even, British humour, a man in a pair of shorts is a big laugh. I mean, David Beckham wore a sarong, and it's almost like the whole UK just ground to a halt. Anyway, there's a lot about that. When I was writing my thing for tomorrow, my friend over there, my partner, reminded me about fingernails.
Oh, yes.
Now, everyone seems to assume that they're a feminine thing. Well, actually, warriors, Babylonian warriors, would paint their nails and sharpen them and wear coal on them to make them black.
Why did you do that?
To be more aggressive. So my nails are black and they're matte and they're quite aggressive. But I don't want to hurt anybody. But I used to have really long nails when I was growing up, and I used them to defend myself, and they really work. If you've got long nails, go for the eye.
There's also the thing in India where boys don't wear henna.
Yes, exactly. I was going to come to that point, yes.
You want to add more on that?
No, I think so. It's just for the
What
years.
is the cultural significance of henna in general?
It's just, engraved in the minds that, only women should be doing this, because...
You mean when for the weddings?
Yes, for the weddings,
Well, I went to one wedding, and I was the first to go and get my mehndi.
Yeah.
And I was saying, some boys, young kids came over to see me, and they were looking and they were intrigued. I said, do yours. No, they were almost insulted that I said they should do it. But I've done it before when I visited schools. When I visited Soft years ago, they brought someone in and did it. And I just think it's amazing. In fact, my tattoos on my left arm are of Venetian lace.
I was about to ask you, is there something cultural about tattoos also?
Tattoos are a cultural subject, but not necessarily for me, because I suppose it's really part of my culture, is it? I made it my culture.
Henna is a part of the Indian culture, but it was always
Indian,
largely
Arabic,
for women.
yeah,
It-
Indian
it's,
and Arabic
it's
as well.
huge.
But
It's Persian. It's Middle Eastern.
yes,
it's
Middle
everywhere.
Eastern, yes.
But why do Indian men dye their hair black? I've never understood that. A 50-year-old,
Yes,
you
just
know
to
they're
look
50,
young.
their face is full of wrinkles. And if there is a God, he gave us white hair to soften our features. There's nothing more aging than having black hair on an old face, because all your crevices will show up even more. And if you're blessed with white hair, it is a blessing from God to make you look fresher. And if you look at yourself with black tinty hair, how sad. And yet they'd criticize someone from using henna or dyeing their
Yes,
fingernails
absolutely.
or this male vanity.
It's a lovely way to put it.
Yes.
But there's also inverted male vanity. I mustn't do this to be beautiful or attractive or handsome because that's not masculine. Well, that's actually inverted vanity, and you're more vain because you're suffering for vanity, not to be vain.
That's very much prevalent in India, actually,
What
because
is?
the masculinity. So because of that, you're not going to put the henna.
Yeah, because the henna,
Or,
henna looks more delicate.
Yes, yes,
And
And delicate is feminine.
yes.
Was that
feminine.
was that a colonial thing that was brought here? Because I think the Britishers and a few other Europeans went round the world ruining it and polluting it with their disgusting ideas of what was masculine and what was feminine. And before that happened, the world was a happier place.
Yes.
He says with the British passport.
Thank you for squashing all popular beliefs, Adrien. It's truly been
I've got the heels for it. I'll squash them.
enlightening. But now I want to move into a couple of more topics, and one is about sustainability in fashion. And there's a lot of technology which is also coming up, so we would like to discuss that also. About sustainability in fashion, can you just tell us more about what it means for fashion in itself?
I think Indians should talk about sustainability in fashion because you had it before the British arrived. You were hand
Yes.
weaving,
One less.
you were dyeing
is that
things, you were
sustainability?
mending things, you were dyeing things with natural dyes. Everything was sustainable before. You ate, you grew what you could eat. You wore what you made.
So you're saying that the traditional Indian textiles did contribute towards sustainability?
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely, and it led the
And
way.
how is it different with the new
It,
fabrics?
when I talk about it, sustainability. When did it start looking sustainable in the West, or if I can say the West, is when the hippies came to India and discovered spirituality and hand-woven fabrics, and they put those two together, and we got it from you. My grandparents' generation would never throw anything away, and everything was made. Everything was made to last and mended. You would never throw anything away. But we're being told the fashion industry is polluting this and polluting that. But people are paying to talk about that. Petroleum producers are saying that. Petroleum producers are far more polluting. The food industry is far more polluting. Technology industry is the most pollutant. Because how often have you had your phone repaired? How often have you had your laptop repaired? How many laptops are abandoned in the world every day because they can't be repaired? And what kind of chemicals and materials are inside those? You can darn a sweater, you can mend a pair of trousers, nothing you can do with your Apple. And I think that's criminal. Fashion is moving faster than anyone to make an effort. It's on all the curriculums.
Absolutely, yes,
All
yes.
Indian schools are talking about it. And yet where it really needs to have the discussion is with technology. The cameras that are filming us now, in 3 years' time, they'll be obsolete. They'll be thrown away, and they'll pollute the world even more. Instead of looking at mountains of clothing, we should be looking at mountains of technology and hold them responsible.
But then, even and that's all true. But with respect to fashion, also, how do brands really reduce the wastage that happens in creating clothes, and how do fashion brands really incorporate sustainability? I think that's the
There are
question that
ways, and they have sustainable office. Most big brands have sustainable offices. We have a course at Academia which is called Fashion Sustainability and Industry Evolution. It's a brilliant title because I tagged that on the end. I sound like Donald Trump now. Industry Evolution, because it's about the industry evolving to making better choices. If we want to be sustainable, there's one thing that we can all really, really do, but it might be a bit late for you guys. Don't have children. The planet does not need the human race. If we kill one insect, wipe it out, we're doomed. If we kill the bees, we'll never live. The planet does not need any more human beings. So be sustainable, don't have babies. That's not going to happen, so we just need to make better choices. And sustainability fundamentally is about making better choices. Nearly 12% of the world's population is involved in the apparel industry, whether it's growing cotton, herding sheep, goat, or whatever. It's involved in some part of the apparel industry. 12% of the world's population.
That's huge.
So we're told by great experts, some of them that I know, we don't need to make any more clothes for 3 or 4 generations. We can just keep repairing them and wearing them. Is that going to happen? No. And if it did happen, 12% of the world's population would die of hunger. So sustainability also means sustaining our industry and making better choices. So as we know, AI will take over the jobs now for people. Students want to do fast fashion, they won't have a career. Students who want to download images from the internet, they won't have a career. Careers will happen for creativity, for the real fashion designers, to create newness and experiment and be interesting and sustain our industry for craftspeople for the future. Whoa, that was quite a lot. Over to you.
Would you like to talk more about sustainability?
As he said, in India we have been using a lot of sustainable things. Like we now it is just coming up, but for generation, I think so. Like if you take
We used to use a
sarees.
lot of hand-me-downs.
Yes,
We all
hand-me-downs.
did.
Yes.
We all had hand-me-downs.
Yeah, but with fast fashion or popular fashion, and with the cost of owning a new T-shirt going down every single day, it is easier to buy a new shirt than trust a hand-me-down, perhaps, because that was the time when the hand-me-downs were really treasured, so it was automatically sustainable. But now it's easier
Yeah,
to
the sarees are
just the
still.
sarees are still handmade.
Stories a lot. So you've got the answer. You've been doing it anyway. Just that you need the sustainable officers in all the big factories, the export factories, the export offices, where they're trying to create clothes for external to India. They should really work hard at being more sustainable, and they need to ask for more money. The world cannot survive on having cheap clothes forever. Go naked or spend some money, or mend it or fix it. Yeah.
Be authentic.
Yeah.
Make your
Do
own
children
fashion.
in India wear hand-me-downs anymore?
Very less. I think so. The newer generation is a lot into fast fashion.
Would there be shame? Would it be shameful
Yes,
if they did?
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Would it be shameful if?
They wear the hand-me-downs.
But there's so just yesterday I was thinking the first suit that I probably wore, I would hand it down to my son when he comes of age, right? So probably like you said, Adrien, that whatever is made with a lot of good taste and you've built it with care is probably worthy of a hand-me-down, and then there's no shaming there,
we're
perhaps.
now designing garments that can be unpicked and remade, which was the traditional way of a Japanese kimono. Japanese kimonos aren't cut; they're folded, and therefore you can just unpick it and remake it. And we're now looking at looking at fashion that can be taken apart. So not using adhesives, not using things that are damaging the fabric. The fabric is still whole, and you can unpick it, and you could give your suit to your son, and he would take it to a tailor who could unpick it and remake it to his requirements.
So, in terms of sustainability, is there a way to make ethical choices for sustainable fabric, sustainable fashion, and do these big brands, or when we are talking about popular fashion, fast fashion, is it really possible to be sustainable when you're producing at such a large scale?
Okay, well, yes, because we have so much technology, there should be traceability. They say traceability is so difficult because we don't know which factory's making it. We don't know which
Yes.
factories. Excuse me, you have a barcode on everything. You breathe, you've got a barcode. You can, with technology today, it's just going to cost a little bit more to have traceability, and then we know. But there's a lot of misinformation, which we were talking about the other day,
Yes.
that we need to understand more because, again, there's misinformation to make us understand. I think generally we get more misinformation than we do correct information. And that's also discoloring our choices. So you think you're buying something that's sustainable, and it probably isn't. Or maybe
Yes.
you buy something you don't. Doesn't occur to you that it's sustainable because they haven't written it on there. There's a lot of issues about cotton in India, as I understand that a lot of the cotton that isn't coming from indigenous seed, indigenous plants. It's coming from cotton that's imported the seed.
Yes.
And that's also having an impact on the land and the environment.
Yes. Lot of
So eventually, people of importance, also known as politicians, will decide that they need a sustainable industry and probably invest in it. It always comes down to education and money.
I think sustainability will also be, I mean, one is about making choices of what fabrics, what factories, and barcoding them and so on and so forth, and tracing it back. That's traceability. But would it also be about the amount of resources that are getting consumed to make a particular fabric, like the amount of water that you're using, the kind of dyes that you're using, and then do we get into a whole new subject of net carbon zero, reducing carbon emissions in fashion also? Is that relevant?
It's happening already.
in AI,
But
yeah.
you can dye.
in India?
You can dye fabric without using one drop of water now. I've seen the machinery in Italy. Dry dyeing is a technique of technology that has existed for a few years. It's just you've got to invest in it. Rather than turning rivers orange, you can actually dye something and not a drop of water is used. But it costs money. Garments are going to cost more, and the consumer doesn't want to pay.
Yes, so there are a lot of products which are made out of, from like old denims or, from plastics, like you have a lot of bags, but then they are very expensive. So it's again, then the question comes like, how is it sustainable if you cannot afford it?
Correct.
So, again, and I feel that, sustainability as a concept should start from your household. If you're going to educate your children, your household people, that,
So how would you start it? How would you do it?
again, from the smallest of things, like, wear cotton, wear your natural fabrics, because if you start going to use a lot of polyester,
Polyester can be recyclable.
yes, now it is, but
More
there
than,
are-
see, if you buy a cotton mix, that's not recyclable because even 1% mix means you can't recycle, you might make it recyclable. So you might all be buying cotton, but if it's got a little bit of stretch in it, and it's not jersey, it's no longer recyclable. So you could buy a polyester that's a recyclable polyester. The Japanese make amazing polyesters.
So what is the worst fabric that is not recyclable at all?
I
think
suppose
so it's
nylon.
nylon, yeah.
And which
Okay.
is
Yes.
manufactured a lot.
Yes.
And
Because
nylon,
even
everything
in-
is plastic that we have. Our phones are all basically nylon.
like if you go to the market, like, of saris, like, nylon is something which is the cheapest which is going to be available. So obviously the consumer is more for that because it's the cheapest available. It dries very easily. Yeah, but it dries very easily, there's no maintenance. So people are going to look at those points rather than, buying a linen sari which is going to, last you more.
Last you for forever.
So yeah, so there are different types of consumers basically who are going to use it. But if you start at a young age, make people aware how how these things work. Then again, if we go to the AI point of view,
Yeah.
it's not sustainable. I mean, AI and sustainability don't go hand in hand because again, you're depleting a lot of water resources. When the
But then-
chatbots are used.
Talking about AI, how is AI really transforming different aspects of fashion, be it in design or be it supply chain or be it production, be it retail? I mean, what I can appreciate is one part of it, perhaps, that the big popular fashion brands which are out there, those which are successful across tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, is because they have figured out a way to use AI and these basically crunching data uh, to know what is going to sell in which pocket, and if it sells well, then they produce more of it. A lot of technology is being used, and in turn it's going to also reduce wastage because they now know what to produce and how much to produce. So isn't it more sustainable than saying the view that you just put forth, that that AI is probably not sustainable?
So there are a lot of pros and cons in AI. I feel that you can use AI for your market research, for your retail, but when it comes to design, I think so your brain is the best thing to use because AI is not going to give you everything. AI is going to give the same uh, thing to five different students, five different people, because it all depends upon the prompts you use, and the prompts are going to again be the same for every person. So when it comes to design, you should trust your brain and your senses. What you see, what you absorb. That is what plays the most important role. When it comes to your businesses, of course, you have everything on the platter when you have AI. You just put whatever your market research is, what your target audience you want. Uh, just if you want to start a business, what kind of things you're looking at, sourcing, etc. A lot of things to look into. But again, it's not, as I said, it's not the most sustainable thing I feel, because AI is going to, deplete a lot of earth resources at the end of the day. And
Data centers and computing
yes,
power.
because a lot of water is used in making that for training the chatbots. So finally, when you're putting one prompt, it's going to activate the machines all around the world and deplete the resources. So,
So are we arguing that fashion is more sustainable than using a lot of AI in fashion? I mean,
finally, see, it depends upon the generation. If it's the new generation, they are going to use AI and digital design more because that's what they've been taught. That is what they are comfortable with. But like for the older generation, like me, Adrian, I think so. We'll still, use our pencils, use the books, use the library. So it's the change which has happened already. We cannot do anything about it anymore, but we can reduce it to a certain extent because when we say sustainability, it's not AI, I would say. You have to look at different things as well. And sustainability is engraved in Indian culture, because we've been used saris which are you know uh, your grandmothers, your mothers, hands down clothes again. We reuse things. Even for our pocha, we cut the old clothes and use it as a pocha. That is also sustainability. So we are not throwing away things just like that, which is very important, and that should be respected.
so talking about sustainability, there are so many clothes in everybody's wardrobe these days. Is there? And I've heard this term of. I mean, how do you reorganize a big wardrobe? Is there a way to do that?
Yes, of course, there's a good way to do that. And I always, when I do the wardrobe consultancy for a client, I always tell them that you don't need to go and shop every time you see a single, because you see something which is new in the market, you don't need to go and buy that immediately. There's somewhere a kind of, it's again the social media, which is prompting you to buy it.
Yeah.
But you don't always have to do that. Set yourself budgets, set yourself timelines that I'm not going to shop for, say, 3 months. Okay, reuse things what are there in your wardrobe. Yes, so you might just like a black shirt what you're wearing, you can wear it in multiple ways. So you don't need a lot of things in your wardrobe. You just have to.
What can I do with this black shirt?
So you can wear it as a. So you can wear it. Yes.
No,
So
so
when you say
I was waiting for you to say, well, you could tie it up over around your waist and make it like shorter.
yes.
Okay.
You could wear it in a formal way or a casual way. Today you're wearing it in a casual way. You could wear it with a
Not
tie
tuck it.
if you want. You could not tuck it in and wear it open with a white t-shirt underneath. Would look pretty cool.
Oh, there's so many ways
Yes.
Wow, look
So
at
anybody
that.
who wants wardrobe consultancy, please go to Manasi.
You go to Manasi.
Yes. So you can wear it with jackets. You can wear it with, you know,
A nice piece of knitwear, a cardigan. I love a cardigan. Not much need for cardigans in Pune though.
oh no, not at
Don't
all.
sweat so much.
Yes.
Okay, so talking about education, I wanted to jump into a few questions around education, and um, Adrian, how do you see the difference in the teaching culture in how teaching is done in fashion schools in India versus anywhere else in the world?
It's quite difficult to answer. I think it's tricky when the academic staff haven't really had global experience. Um, you might have an interesting PhD, but maybe it's only interesting to you and is of no use of the research to your students. I think the curricula can be improved. I think there's a national curriculum which is has to be, some schools have to obey by, and it seems to be based around dressmaking and not design. So again, I always go back that please teach some design if they're going to be designers, or teach pattern cutters if they're going to be tailors. But I don't see a lot of commitment. I've been here 4 months and I'm available to talk to anybody. There's not a lot of commitment to the career, but that goes for a lot of things in India. People tend to go to work, and if they're physically in the workplace, they seem to think that they are working rather than actively producing something. In India, do you have to write reports every week of what you've achieved? I don't know.
No.
We do.
I mean, not in the fashion part.
In the technology sector or
Yeah,
the
in
manufacturing
education,
sector, we do a lot of
I mean, how much, what do schools have to submit reports generally, not just in fashion, about where do the graduates go, what are the graduate achievements? Are you studying for 4-year degree to then go and be selling clothes in the mall? Is that satisfactory, or are you then just flipping burgers at McDonald's, or then are you just being at home because you haven't got a job? Do schools publish those reports? Are they available for the families?
No, I don't think so. No.
In the UK, they have to be online. And if you go to a school in Italy, the first question will be your employability rate. And you have to be able to discuss where the students are. At Academia, we have on the website 50 we're a tiny school with very few students. We're minute. We have 50 pages with about 30 students per page of what the students' employment is.
So, if in India one were to find out what the graduates of fashion schools are doing, how would you go about it? And where are these kids generally employed?
So basically, I would say uh, the first thing which the colleges need to start doing is giving them the global exposure. As he said, I mean, there are so many students who are learning design, but they are not even aware of the biggest designers in the world. They can't pronounce the names of the luxury brands properly. So if you have to be in fashion, you have to be really aware of all these things which are going around globally. You cannot just go to the college and learn something and come back. The students have social media everywhere now, but it's whether they want to use it or not. There are a lot of subscriptions which are available for reading, but I don't think so it's of any use to them, because they've not been told that you should go and read about all these things.
Also, it's a matter of education. Students in India think education is something you've got to be told rather than something you've got to learn. Learning is a personal responsibility. I can teach you everything, but if you're not responsible to learn, you will learn nothing. And whose responsibility is that, mine or yours? there needs to be a personal responsibility for learning and not just the emphasis placed on teaching. So if I spoke to an Indian student now and I say, so what was the big news today? How many students would be able to tell me?
Yes, absolutely.
So what would you tell the Indian students? Is there like a ritual that they should do every day?
Yep.
If you're a serious fashion student, what is the first thing to be done when you wake up?
First thing I do when I wake up, unfortunately, I look at my iPhone, and I check the news, and that could be CNN, BBC, something like that. I want to know what's happening globally. Then I'll be looking at Business of Fashion, and then I'll be looking at Vogue Runway and analysing what's happening yesterday in the other part of the world on the runway. And that's and connecting actually news to runway, to how people are thinking about the world, and not just looking at the collections, reading about them, because it's so easy. Vogue Runway also has a report written by a journalist of what the designer was thinking and doing.
Can you give you said something interesting that, connecting what's happening in the world with the Vogue runway. Can you give a very tangible example of what's happening in the world today with what you saw in the Vogue runway, let us say this week?
Yeah, absolutely. It's my personal interpretation.
Yeah.
But when you see women's rights being taken away from them in a part of the world that created, in a way, women's rights and freedom, we knew that was going to happen. And what do we see on the catwalk? Women wearing shirts, ties, and jackets and tailoring. I'm talking about this tomorrow. Tailoring is huge. I love the fact you're always wearing tailoring. So instead of fighting the toxic male, disarm them by wearing a jacket as a woman. But using tailoring in the real sense. Do the pockets on your jackets work, by the
No.
way? You know what I'm like. Do they work?
No.
You see? That's an anti-feminist jacket.
Yes.
Do you have any pockets on the inside of your jacket?
No.
That's woman's clothing. What does that tell you? She's worthless. She has nothing to put in her jacket. How many pockets when you wear a jacket? Do you have one jacket that doesn't have a pocket?
No.
Do you have pockets that don't work?
No, all of them work.
Okay.
4 of them.
What would you feel like if your trousers didn't have pockets? How would you stand? How would you behave? Now what we're seeing on the catwalk, a lot of more pockets, military style pockets, tailoring that's really beautiful tailoring for women. It's giving a message that women need to be emancipated again because it's being eroded away. I've known fashion designers respond to prime ministers in certain countries by designing a certain way. I don't want to quote anybody's name, but he told me that he started doing dresses from the neck to the floor and the arms being covered because he didn't appreciate the prime minister's opinion of women. And that was in a European country. So he was directly responding to a political. Fashion responds to the world. It's a cultural subject. We don't design out of fantasy and stick flowers on things because we think they're pretty. We create things that have social responsibility. The head of Caring, the owner of Caring, came to my school, Francois Pinault, and he said he feels a responsibility for people's mental health and fashion. There's a direct connection. This is the head of one of the biggest companies, richest companies in the world. And it's wonderful when you hear that they take these subjects seriously. They're not just about making a lot of money. They do actually, a lot of them really do care. And a lot of it is about social status. Catherine Hamnett is a perfect example, where she was doing slogans, T-shirts in the 70s, and she still is, fighting battles and calling for peace. And Vivienne Westwood, as crazy and eccentric as she was, you read some of the things, they are quite lunatic, but other things are spot on, and she's very relevant still today and always will be. So, and she always said, buy less, don't buy my clothes. Her company kept producing more clothes, but she kept saying, stop buying them. So that it's a social responsibility. So students need to look at the news, read the global news, be aware that most of the information they're getting is going to be false, and just be culturally curious.
What is the Indian fashion communicating to you in this way? So what's happening in the country versus the fashion you see? Is there a connection?
I'm not really.
From your eyes, or maybe even Manasi could answer that.
My eyes probably a little bit misshapen. I just see that, may I say, there's too much thinking about global fashion and thinking they've got to buy into it rather than developing a national identity of fashion, which isn't the sari. The sari is beautiful and perfect as it is. It doesn't need developing. Start thinking about, we see lots of beautiful collections in India and you don't see a lot of people wearing them. I'm a huge fan of the collections in Indonesia, the beautiful collections that still have cultural identity. The Japanese have won. If you look at Japanese fashion and their culture, it can sell anywhere in the world. It's Japanese and for any nationality can wear it. It's very hard for me to wear Indian clothing that looks Indian without me appearing as like I'm culturally appropriating something.
The fusion is missing.
I actually made a man sari, and I wear it sometimes. It's basically a very long T-shirt with 7 meters at the back that I then wrap around myself and drape it diagonally, and I call it a mari, a man sari. Because I'm desperate to find something. I love wearing long shirts, like a kurta or something. I love wearing long shirts and developing long shirts because that's what I like to wear. And a lot of the fashion designers I follow, not Indian, wear those. I'd love to see a polo. You love a polo shirt?
Yeah.
Would you wear one that came down to your knees? But you would if it was an Indian shirt. So why wouldn't you design a hybrid?
That's why I was thinking that we have a kurta, then why not that?
Yes.
You have a kurta. Why don't you have a polo kurta?
Yes.
But talking about, like you just said, that whatever is happening in the world connects with what happens in fashion, and I was trying to draw an Indian example here, like khadi. Khadi has become like an in thing in India for the past 4-5 years, and the Modi kurta also, and so many good brands with khadi shirts also that have become famous.
I think so with the younger generation, I've again come to the younger generation, they just blindly follow what is shown to them. So that's why we see fast fashion picking up so much, because it's worn like everywhere. For example, crop tops. There was a time where everyone was wearing only crop tops in India. It's kind of going now.
But the crop top is kind of culturally Indian anyway.
Yes.
It's
the
because of the
blouse.
sari. And there was a time where we didn't have them in global fashion, and Indian students kept designing them. And I kept saying, if a woman in New York wore a crop top, they'd think she was a prostitute. And then all of a sudden, they start wearing crop tops. They still look like prostitutes to me, but within the context of India, it works. But if you've got a pink flabby belly, it doesn't look so attractive as if you've got a lovely brown one. Because I just think I prefer a brown skin to white, but then again, maybe I'm racist. I prefer brown skin to white.
There are so many things from our heritage, which we can pick and make use. But
You've got more heritage culture here than you have probably in the rest of the
anywhere,
world.
yes.
You just haven't converted it like the Japanese have, even how the Chinese are doing now, into make it globally interesting. You're just kind of thinking, this is what we've always done, we'll keep doing it, and why aren't the designers using it in other countries? It's because you've not developed it enough. You've not done your research, you've not done your experimentation, and you're being pulled into the idea that West is best.
So there's one more question. We were talking about teaching culture in India versus abroad, and you gave a very long answer to it. So how should, if there's a 21 something or 18 something or 20 something who is looking for getting into fashion education, then what are the attributes that student should look at to zero in on a particular school in India or abroad as well? How should they go about making their choice? Which school to go to?
First of all, there is no best school. There's only what's best for you. So if you were looking for a school, you need to know what kind of school do you need to learn. How do you like to learn? What kind of learner are you? That's a question.
I believe that learning has become very non-linear. It is experiential. It is via reading. It is via podcast. It is via audiocast. It is by just having these conversations. It's a very 360-degree approach to learning these days. I mean, that's the best way you learn, I believe. You touch and feel, you
Everybody
hear.
learns in a different way.
Yes.
I think there are about 9 different manners in which you learn, and everybody has to find their right way to learn. So the first thing you need to do, you've probably been studying, by the time you get to us, how many years? You've been studying what, 12 years before you get to doing a degree?
Yes, so
Maybe?
12 and 4. 12 academic years.
So
and
you've
then,
been studying 12 academic years and you don't know what kind of learner you are. Then you've not been taught very well. You should be able to at least self-analyze yourself and say, I like making things with my hands and experiencing things. No, I really like to be able to read everything first and then study something. I really like to be in group and work in groups, or I like one-to-one tuition, or I'd rather be in a large group and study in large groups. Think what kind of learner you are and how you like to learn, and then find a course and a school and a location that's going to give you your needs, not somebody else's needs. Primarily, someone might just be asking you for money and doesn't have your needs and their interest.
Can you help a 20-something choose a right school, Manasi?
yes, definitely. Because what I've seen is in the Indian students, especially, the family plays a very important
Yeah.
role. Because the family kind of dominates the career choice. Because finally everything comes to making money, doing a job. In that aspect, the creativity somewhere takes a backseat because in Indian society, I think so. It's still like every family, they want to produce engineers and doctors, and I'm not against them at all, but I'm just saying that because I've gone through this. Someone who takes arts, like Bachelor of Arts, is not very very much respected in our society. That has to change somewhere because your creativity otherwise is not going to come out.
But
in
thank
the
goodness AI will change that, because we won't have doctors and engineers. AI is going to take over. So all of a sudden, you won't get paid much. There'll be much less doctors because most of it's going to be AI, much less engineers. It'll all be taken by
Yes.
AI. They won't earn very much money, and the creatives will be number one. And nobody thought about that.
yes.
And there's going to be so much unemployment. Fundamentally, if parents want to be involved, they need to do some research. We see parents who've done zero research
Yes.
and will just tell you, my child wants to do this. And they'll say, well, why? Or they like it, but do they have any skills? No, but that's for you to teach them. Well, no, they have to be learners. They have to be ready to learn. What have you done to enable them to learn? So, first of all, if parents want to be involved, they need to get an education too of what they're looking at. Always look around and see 100 schools before you choose one. But that takes a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of research. But I think sometimes fundamentally it might be best just to listen to the child or the young person.
I think so. It also comes down to the grading system, in India, in the schools, because if you are like a bright child, with good grades, then you're going to become an engineer or a doctor, and if you don't have, then you should consider art. That is something which I have seen a lot.
I think do you think that in India specifically, because we churn so many doctors and engineers, we have a problem with abstraction in India? We are not great at abstraction because we have been subjected to rote learning and gradation based on the tests that we take,
100%.
and a very
You hit the nail.
keen
Yes.
sense of right versus wrong.
You have
Yes.
the best doctors in the world. Being British, we know. We see a lot of Indian doctors or Indian origin doctors, and they're the best. They're great doctors. Because fundamentally, there's no respect for creativity. Creativity here is seen as a craftsman rather than creative thinking. If you know your taxonomy, which is a way of thinking how words are related to thinking, so I use Bloom's taxonomy when I'm creating learning outcomes for a university. It's very hard to create learning outcomes at a low level for designers because we're already thinking at PhD level. That's how hard our job is, because we have to recreate something new. To create something new is extremely academic, more academic than remembering something from a book and repeating it as a doctor. So this misconception of academic subject and non-academic subject, if your child is able to create new thinking and create something new in 3D, it's a genius. If your child can remember something from the book, it's pretty basic. So the understanding of what academia is and what being academic and academic thinking is, I never considered myself academic, and yet I can create newness every day.
So what skills, or how do you, for young learners, because eventually they are going to lead to a choice that, they complete 12 academic years and then they're going to say, okay, maybe I want to choose this trade. But like they say, catch them young. So when these guys are young, how do you help them think in terms of abstraction or creating new things in 2D and 3D, or get the design thinking there? Because you can't teach them by telling them about design thinking, but there will be certain things that you're spotting as a parent or in young talent that will make you think that these guys are good at abstraction in general as a concept.
It's a really good question, but you see children like my friend's child, he draws constantly. He doesn't talk a lot now to me, but a couple of years ago he'd always be talking, and he would constantly draw monsters every day, and every monster he would draw would have a different story and a different meaning behind it. It was like this incredible imagination. He seems to have stopped that now, which is a bit of a shame, but I found the child was extraordinary, because a child that can draw and create something that doesn't exist has got a fantastic imagination, but that has to be held on to, because we get taught not to use it. We get taught to remember things and not imagine things. The most powerful things we can do is imagine the impossible. And that's what children are brilliant at doing. So you'll watch a child at play, you'll watch what a child chooses to do, not what it's being told to do, or not just sat in front of a screen, or if they want to touch something and make something, because they're using imagination to make the impossible reality. And that's what humans are brilliant at doing, and only we do that.
Can this be taught, or is it, can humans be taught?
I feel it should not be restricted. Like as he said, as a parent, probably someone would tell the child that why are you drawing monsters? That is something.
My friends were thrilled, and we were thrilled he was drawing monsters too.
Yes, but I think in the family settings which we have usually seen, they would be like restricted that why are you drawing this? Why are you doing this? That somewhere restricts the flow of creativity. So I feel that they should be just able to do, if they are drawing, then just give them a free hand in drawing whatever they want to draw. And sooner or later, you will understand what the skill set is.
Yeah.
So
That's a lovely answer.
A lot of children will be thinking in 3D, and their parents can only think in 2D, and then they don't even realize what they're doing. I do mathematics in 3D shapes. That's how I think. You've got to start to understand and think, well, how do you think, or how is my child thinking? Maybe the parents could read a few books on education and thinking to help them understand their child. But basically allowing children to play creatively and take away the iPads and the iPhones or whatever they play with to keep them quiet. I think that would be great. I think children in India generally do play with their hands, though.
They do.
yes, they do. They do.
But it's going through a change in itself. With screens and content is so much there. There's so much content we consumed that kids are also in India are also using, and the families are smaller now. So that is also one more thing.
To have less babies.
But when there were many more kids in Indian families, I mean, I'm just looking back when I was growing up, there used to be a lot of interactions, and in those interactions we used to play different things and create different things when we were growing up. But if you look at today's kids with technology and all that, those opportunities are much lesser.
I think so. Soft skills is something which can be taught to the, any student, be it any student. It doesn't have to be a fashion because that is something which is going to be needed later on. And when we see students coming from the smaller cities, smaller towns, it does become a problem in terms of communication, especially in
But are they
fashion.
good at creating?
Yes, they
especially
are
in
very
fashion?
good at creating, but then they cannot communicate.
So the soft skills part is lagging behind.
Yes, in fashion it is very necessary because it gives you that kind of confidence.
So then how do you train that person for?
That is something, again, it can be added to the curriculum of the college, because soft
It
skills
usually is.
Yes.
So is that also an attribute to select a good college?
In India, we don't have that. Like at least in the fashion colleges which I have seen, the soft skills part is.
When I interview, I mean, normally I see from the portfolio if I want the student or not, just from the portfolio for masters. Then the interview, I used to use that to connect them to their work. But if they're struggling to communicate, I then have to sit back and say, is this going to be a problem? Because if you're not a communicator, you're not going to be able to sell your ideas, communicate your ideas. However, I spoke to a group of students on their first day and I said, put your hands up, who's shy? And one girl's hand went straight up and she wasn't even looking me in the face. So I knew there was a lot of work to be done with that student, but she turned out to be an amazing student. But it can be quite good to identify people who have communication problems. Maybe they have they're mentally diverse, they have mental diversity. So they need to be treated in a different way and prepared for industry in a better way. So they have coping mechanisms. But you can learn to be a great communicator. And I think I told you before, I'm incredibly shy and I can't talk. And I had a stammer as a child. And I can completely act my way out of it because that's what I have to do constantly. I have to become someone else that can communicate and can think and can express my thoughts because that's my job.
That's a lovely way of putting it. Things so when people are selecting a school, you said they need to look at a learning style.
Yeah.
They need to communicate well.
Yeah.
If they're shy, then they need to think of it.
Prepare for interview.
Prepare for interviews. Yeah.
I mean, this is what you're spending a lot of time doing. It's so
and
sad.
be aware what is happening globally in fashion.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's so sad. People don't, like I said, I mean, okay, I'm a bit sad myself because I'm just addicted to reading the news. But it goes up and down. I mean, if you've got some people in power who are quite sane and normal, it doesn't become very interesting. But then we have some lunatics who are in power in the world and you say, oh, what craziness did they get up to yesterday? And it becomes your soap opera. The news is just a soap opera. And that's what the period where perhaps we're living in now. But it all affects what we're doing in the design world.
Thank you, Adrien. Thank you, Manasi, for having a pretty fluid discussion around fashion. And it was not really a discussion around fashion alone, but we covered so many things about how to think, about how to grapple with abstraction, about design, fashion, and also education. Thank you so much for coming over at InnoTalks. And before we conclude, we have an InnoTalks canvas where we'll hand over a pen to you, and we would love your message for the team that makes InnoTalks podcast. And hopefully this episode of ours can also reach out to many viewers. So thank you so much.
Thank you.